Have you ever felt like life gave you nothing but pain? Like the world owed you something and never delivered? What if everything you ever blamed God, fate, society, wasn't the real reason you were suffering? What if the greatest gift you've ever received is the one you've been cursing all along? This is the story of a man who hated his own life. A man who screamed at the sky, blamed the gods, and cursed the body he lived in, until one moment changed everything. And what happened next? It will challenge the way you see your own life and your own worth. Let me take you there, back to a dusty village, where a silent sage waited to meet a very angry man. In a quiet village surrounded by dusty fields and mango trees, there lived a man who never smiled. His eyes were sharp with resentment, his words like knives thrown at the sky. Every morning, he sat outside his hut, grumbling about how unfair life was. "I have nothing," he would shout. "No money, no luck, not even a purpose." And then, almost like a ritual, he would lift his fists and curse the heavens. "Why did you give me this useless body? Why do you bless others and not me?" The villagers avoided him. They whispered that he had once been kind, once full of dreams, but years of hardship had made him bitter, hollow. They tried to help. Some gave him food, others spoke gentle words. But every kind gesture was thrown back at them, with sarcasm, anger, or silence. What made him this way? Maybe it was the hunger. Maybe it was watching others succeed while he struggled. Maybe it was simply the slow erosion of hope, when you feel like nothing you do matters anymore. And maybe he wasn't all that different from people you and I have met. That coworker who always complains. That friend who stopped believing in anything. Or that part of ourselves, in the quiet moments, that whispers, "What's the point of it all?" You see, when life feels like a losing game, it's easy to believe the fault lies somewhere else. With the world, with God, with some cosmic injustice. But here's the thing. Pain often makes us blind to the blessings we already have. We forget the miracle of simply being alive, of breathing, walking, seeing, feeling, until something or someone wakes us up. And in this story, that someone was a traveler who had just arrived in the village, a gentle teacher who didn't preach with sermons, but with silence, compassion, and one life-changing conversation. Let me tell you what happened. When the angry man finally met the Buddha, it was just an ordinary afternoon. The sun was soft and golden, children played in the dust, and the breeze carried the smell of lentils cooking over fire. No one expected a sage to arrive that day, but as the villagers looked up from their chores, they saw a figure in simple robes, walking barefoot beside a group of calm, radiant followers. It was the Buddha. Word spread like wildfire. The Enlightened One is here, in our very village. For many, it felt like a blessing beyond belief. They had heard of his wisdom, how he could ease sorrow without judgment, how people left him not just with answers, but with peace. So they came. Old farmers, young mothers, curious children. They sat under the banyan tree and listened to the Buddha speak of suffering, kindness, and the path to freedom. But in the corner of the crowd, someone crossed his arms and scoffed. It was him, the angry man. He muttered to himself, "Another holy man preaching empty words. What can he possibly know about a life like mine?" The villagers, still hopeful, approached the Buddha. They told him about the man, how he was always angry, how he cursed the divine and insulted anyone who tried to help. One villager whispered, "He's not just bitter. He's dangerous. We worry he might even try to harm you." But the Buddha smiled. "Please bring him to me," he said gently. "I may have something to offer him. But he's violent. He lashes out." Another warned, "He won't listen. He'll insult you like he insults everyone else." The Buddha's smile didn't fade. He simply said, "A heart that suffers most often hides behind anger. Tell him, I will not judge. I simply wish to understand." So, with hesitation and hope, a few brave villagers went to find the man. Now here's the thing. Sometimes in life, we think the people who hurt others are beyond saving, too far gone. But what if all they're really waiting for is someone who doesn't flinch when they scream, someone who sees through the pain and stays? This moment, this quiet invitation from a peaceful teacher, was the beginning of something powerful. Because when pain meets patience, when anger meets understanding, transformation becomes possible. And so the villagers returned, and with some persuasion, the man, grumbling, doubtful, and full of fury, agreed to meet the Buddha. What happened next was not a debate, not a lecture, but a question that turned everything upside down. Let's step into that conversation. The villagers hesitated. Even as they approached the angry man's hut, their steps slowed, their voices softened. No one really wanted to be the one to speak to him. They had all tried before, and each time, they were met with shouting, insults, or silence. It's not that they didn't care. They cared deeply, but they were tired. Tired of being pushed away, tired of kindness being mistaken for weakness. And truthfully, they were afraid, not of being hurt physically, but of something harder to name. The heaviness that comes when you face someone else's bitterness, and you don't know what to do with it. Have you ever been there? Maybe it was a family member who always snapped at you, a colleague who brought a storm of negativity into every room, or even a friend who used to shine, but now carries a permanent cloud above them. You want to help, but part of you also wants to protect your peace. So you keep your distance. You tell yourself, they won't listen anyway, better stay out of it. And sometimes, that's true. But sometimes, what that person truly needs is not advice, not correction, but presence. Just someone willing to stand there, without flinching, and say, I see your pain, and I'm not walking away. The Buddha understood this. He knew the angry man's harshness wasn't his nature, it was his shield. A shield built over years of disappointment, loss, and self-loathing. That's why, when others warned him, the Buddha didn't back down. He didn't try to argue or avoid. He offered something far more powerful, compassion without condition. And perhaps that's the real courage, not fighting anger with anger, but meeting it with stillness. So when the man, full of rage and suspicion, finally stood before the Buddha, something remarkable happened. He wasn't silenced. He wasn't punished. He was heard. And the Buddha, with a calm voice and soft eyes, asked a question that no one else had ever dared ask. A question that didn't accuse or shame, but revealed something deeper. Let me tell you what he said. He didn't bow. He didn't smile. He didn't even sit down. The man stood there, arms crossed, glaring at the Buddha like a challenger facing his opponent. So, he said, you're the one they call enlightened, another fraud in robes, another man pretending to know the truth. The air around them stilled. Even the birds seemed to pause. But the Buddha didn't react. No judgment, no defense, just presence. The man went on, his voice rising. You people speak of peace, but you know nothing of hunger. You speak of acceptance, but you've never lived with empty hands and a worthless body. You sit there in silence while others suffer. What good is that kind of wisdom? It was anger, yes, but underneath it was grief. He wasn't just insulting the Buddha. He was screaming at every promise that life had broken, at every prayer that went unanswered, at every moment he felt invisible. Have you ever heard someone talk like that? Someone who seems allergic to hope, who mocks anything pure or kind, because deep down they fear they'll never have it? It's easy to call them negative, toxic, or hopeless. But sometimes, it's not hate that speaks loudest. It's pain in disguise. In our world today, we see this everywhere. In online comments filled with bitterness. In people who laugh at goodness, call it weakness. In the voices that say, nothing matters, no one cares, it's all fake anyway. And while it's tempting to dismiss them, to label and move on, the Buddha chose differently. He didn't argue. He didn't try to fix the man. He listened. And when the angry man demanded, "Can you solve my problems or not?" the Buddha offered something unexpected. Not a lecture, not a miracle, but a story. One that held a mirror up to the man's own heart. A story that began with a single, piercing question. "How much would you sell your eyes for?" And just like that, the conversation shifted. From rage to reflection. From shouting to silence. Let me tell you what happened next. The man stood stiffly, still simmering. He expected the Buddha to argue, maybe scold him, or toss out some riddle wrapped in mystery. But instead, the Buddha simply asked, "Do you want wealth?" Caught off guard, the man snapped, "Of course I do. Why else would I come here? If you can't solve my money problem, then stop wasting my time." The Buddha nodded slowly. "I know a king," he said, "who is offering a fortune, more gold than you could carry, to anyone willing to give him something rare and precious." The man's eyes narrowed. "What kind of something?" "Your eyes," the Buddha replied calmly. "He needs them for his son who was born blind. If you offer both of yours, you will receive gold equal to your body's weight." The man's anger cracked, just a little. His voice dropped. "My eyes? You want me to go blind for money?" The Buddha didn't flinch. He let the silence do the work. "Absolutely not," the man barked. "Why would I give up my sight? What would I do with gold if I can't even see it?" The Buddha asked gently, "So, your eyes have value?" "Of course they do," he growled. "They're mine. I need them." "Then they're not useless," the Buddha said. "Not like you claimed before." The man paused. His face flickered, like a candle dancing in the wind. The Buddha continued, "What about just one eye? Then, half the gold. Still a fortune." "You're insane," the man said, now unsettled. "I wouldn't give even one eye, or a finger, or anything. This body might be poor, but it's all I've got." And there it was, the truth he had hidden under all that anger. He did value his body. He did care to protect it, even when he claimed it was worthless. You see, sometimes we speak of ourselves with cruelty, not because we truly believe we're worthless, but because we're afraid no one else sees our worth either. But given a choice, to lose a part of ourselves for something material, we remember that what we have right now is irreplaceable. How many people do we know who say they hate their lives until they face a diagnosis? Who say they don't care until something's taken from them? Our health, our senses, our breath. We don't think about them until we're forced to. The Buddha didn't shame the man. He just held up a mirror. And in that mirror, the man saw something he hadn't noticed in a long time, that he was alive, whole, capable, not empty. And that realization was the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. But the Buddha wasn't finished. He had one more question, gentle, quiet, but sharp as lightning. If your body is so valuable, why do you treat it as if it's not? And with that, the angry man stopped being angry, just for a moment, because something deep inside him had begun to shift. Let me show you what happened next. For a long while, he didn't say anything. The man who had stormed in with fire in his eyes, who cursed the heavens and demanded gold, was now still. He looked down at his hands, then slowly touched his own face, as if realizing for the very first time that he could feel, that he could see, and something cracked. Not outside, inside. His lips quivered. His eyes, once hard and guarded, began to soften. Then, quietly, as if it surprised even him, a tear rolled down his cheek. "I've spent my whole life," he whispered, "hating the one thing that never left me, this body, this life." And with those words, the shield fell. He dropped to his knees, as if the weight of his pain was too much to carry standing up. More tears came, not of shame, but of release, because sometimes what we call anger is just grief with nowhere to go. And sometimes what looks like a hardened heart is really just a broken one, waiting to be heard. The Buddha said nothing. He didn't rush to fill the silence. He simply sat with the man, present, open, still. And in that stillness, he offered something the man had never received before: acceptance, without conditions. You see, transformation doesn't always come from grand revelations. Sometimes, it begins in a moment of stillness, when someone looks at you without judgment, and you finally feel safe enough to cry. That was the moment the angry man stopped fighting the world and started listening to himself. It was the first step, not toward money, but toward meaning. And as he wiped his tears, the Buddha spoke once more, this time with the gentleness of a teacher and the clarity of a mirror. You curse the life you've been given, but forget it's the very gift that lets you curse at all. From that point on, the conversation wasn't about gold anymore. It wasn't even about problems or solutions. It became a lesson about gratitude, about seeing what we already have, before chasing what we think we need. And that is where the real shift happened. Let me show you what the Buddha revealed next. A truth so simple, and yet so often forgotten. The man sat quietly, his anger washed away by tears, his silence now deeper than his rage had ever been. The Buddha looked at him, not as a judge, but as someone who saw beyond the surface, straight into the part of us that forgets who we really are. He spoke gently. You say you want gold, but what would you use it for? The man paused. To eat, to live, to finally feel like I matter. The Buddha nodded, as if agreeing with the longing itself, but not the illusion behind it. And then he said something that stopped the air around them. You already have what you're searching for. You've just forgotten how to see it. The man blinked. The Buddha continued, you wish for food, yet your body still breathes. You crave worth, yet you walk, speak, feel, and think, gifts that no gold can ever buy. You seek to matter, but you already do, simply because you exist. It was a truth so simple, so pure, that it felt almost unfamiliar. Because in a world that tells us we are never enough, we begin to believe it. We chase more money, more attention, more things, thinking that somewhere out there is the missing piece. But the irony is, we're not missing anything. We've just stopped noticing what's already here. Think about it. How many of us stare at screens, scrolling through other people's lives, while ignoring the miracle of our own? How many mornings do we wake up without even thanking our body for carrying us through the storm of another day? We live as if everything we have isn't quite enough until it's gone. The Buddha didn't tell the man to stop desiring. He simply invited him to look again, to realize that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as empty as he thought. And you know what? That message isn't just for him. It's for us. Because the moment we remember that we already hold so much is the moment we stop chasing and start living. And that was the beginning of a deeper gratitude, one that doesn't depend on possessions, but on presence. Next, the Buddha spoke of something even more powerful, a truth that most people never realize until it's almost too late, the miracle of simply being human. Let's explore that together. The Buddha looked at the man, his face still soft with tears, and spoke with the gentleness of someone who had seen much suffering, and even more beauty. This body you call worthless, he said, is one of the rarest gifts in the universe. The man listened, really listened. You were given hands, the Buddha continued, not just to grasp food or coins, but to build, to comfort, to create. You were given a voice, not just to shout or beg, but to speak truth, to sing, to connect. You were given eyes, not just to see pain, but to witness the sky, to look into the face of someone you love. He paused, then asked, have you ever thanked your body, simply for being here? The man looked down at his hands, calloused, weathered, but still alive. And slowly, like a seed stirring beneath the earth, something began to grow. A sense of awe. It was subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. You see, the Buddha wasn't romanticizing pain. He wasn't pretending life was easy. He simply reminded the man, and all of us, that even in the midst of hardship, we are walking miracles, and yet we forget. We chase wealth, fame, validation, and overlook the treasure we carry every day. The truth is, many people don't realize how sacred the human form is until it's taken away. Ask someone who's lost their sight in an accident. Ask the elderly person whose legs no longer work. Ask the mother who can no longer hold her child. They'll tell you what we all tend to forget. This body, imperfect as it may seem, is irreplaceable. In Buddhist thought, to be born as a human is an extraordinary opportunity, not because humans are superior, but because we have the capacity to awaken, to reflect, to choose kindness. That's the real gift, not just the body itself, but what the body allows: awareness, growth, compassion, love. The Buddha ended this part of the teaching not with a command, but a reminder. There will not be another body like this one. There will not be another chance quite like this. And as the man absorbed these words, he didn't speak. He just sat there, hands resting in his lap, and for the first time in years, he felt at home in his own skin. But the Buddha wasn't finished yet, because the next truth was perhaps the hardest to accept, and the most freeing of all. No matter how broken you feel, you can still begin again. Let's walk into that final truth together. The man sat still, as if the whole world had gone quiet inside him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what he lacked. He was simply here, in this body, in this moment, with this breath. The Buddha looked at him and said softly, "Do not throw away this life, because it may be the only one like it you ever have." The words hung in the air, not as a warning, but as a gentle awakening, and the man understood. He had spent so long wishing to escape, so long believing that he was cursed, that he had never stopped to ask, what if this life, flawed as it seems, is sacred? You see, when we feel stuck in darkness, the idea of giving up can creep in like a shadow. We say things like, "I can't do this anymore. Nothing will ever change. What's the point of trying?" And for some, that despair becomes so deep, they begin to believe that leaving life is easier than learning how to live. But here's the truth. Pain is temporary, but life is a one-time invitation. Even when it hurts, even when it's messy, even when nothing makes sense. Some people never get the chance to grow old. Some people leave this world too soon, not because they wanted to, but because they didn't have a choice. But you're still here, and as long as you are, there is always room for change, always space to begin again. Take, for example, the veterans who return from war, carrying invisible wounds. Many of them, at their darkest point, believe they are broken beyond repair. But with the smallest thread of support, a hand, a word, a moment, they learn to stand again, to live again. Or think of the single mother working 3 jobs, overwhelmed, exhausted, barely holding on. She cries in the dark, but she wakes up because there is a spark inside her that refuses to go out. The will to keep living, even when everything hurts, isn't weakness, it's courage. And when you realize that being alive, right now, in this body, in this life, is a miracle, you stop waiting for a new life to begin and start cherishing the one you're already in. The Buddha didn't offer the man gold. He offered him something far more valuable, a chance to come back to himself. And in that return, the man found something he thought he had lost forever: quiet joy, the kind that doesn't need possessions, the kind that doesn't wait for perfection, the kind that comes when you finally say to yourself, "This life is worth living, and I'm not giving up on it." And that was the real transformation. But there's one more truth, the final piece of this journey, because loving life starts with learning how to love yourself. Let me take you there. The man rose slowly from the ground, not as someone defeated, but as someone rediscovered. His face no longer burned with anger. It was calm, open. For the first time in years, he looked not at the Buddha, but inward, and what he saw surprised him. Not a broken man, not a failure, but a life still beating, a heart still willing, a soul still worthy. The Buddha simply smiled. "You do not have to be perfect," he said. "You only need to begin by treating yourself like someone worth loving." And there it was, the quiet truth we all forget. When you love yourself, life begins to love you back. Not because circumstances suddenly change, but because you do. You stop punishing yourself for the past. You stop comparing your story to someone else's. You stop waiting for permission to feel joy. Instead, you start noticing little things. The softness of morning light, the warmth of your breath, the simple miracle of being alive. And from that noticing comes gratitude. And from gratitude comes peace. It doesn't mean life won't hurt. It will. But you won't turn against yourself anymore. Because the moment you treat your body, your heart, your soul as something sacred, the whole world begins to mirror that love back to you. People sense it. Opportunities shift. Even the pain feels different, because now it has space to heal. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like the angry man in the story, tired, bitter, disconnected, know this: you are not broken, you are not too late, and you are not alone. Start small. Thank your feet for carrying you. Thank your hands for holding on. Thank your heart for trying again, every single day. Because this life is not waiting for a better version of you. It's waiting for you, just as you are, right here, right now. And when you finally choose to love yourself, life won't just let you in. It will open wide and say, "Welcome home." If this story touched something in you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Leave a comment. What part of the story spoke to you most? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that heal, awaken, and connect us all. We'll meet again soon. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You're doing better than you think.